Good afternoon, everybody. What a beautiful day it is here in District 5. We have a special treat for you today. My name is Jacob Ochoa, and alongside I have Lillian Averett and Supervisor Gutierrez. Thank you for taking the time today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jacob. Thank you, Lillian, for hosting this podcast. Thank you to the residents of District 5 for listening in during their busy day. Looking forward to it.
Of course. Supervisor, what is that? What does it mean to be a supervisor?
Well, that's a big question I always get, by the way. When I'm at the supermarket or I'm talking to a resident, they say, you're a supervisor, you're a county supervisor. What is that, right? Well, a county supervisor, there's 5 county supervisors for the county of Riverside. And what we help do is we help oversee countywide programs and services. Like, for example, any type of services like related to public safety, emergency services, regional services, your assessments to your homes, like your tax assessments, all of those types of things. That's really what a county supervisor does. County hospital, public defender's office, all of those kinds of things as well.
Okay, yeah, well, it sounds like a lot. Yeah. We know you wear a lot of hats, and you are a very busy man. Before we get into the business, let's hear about your business. How do I say your name?
That's a good question too. So the biggest question I get actually is, how do you say your first name, right?
Right.
So my first name is Yxstian and my last name is Gutierrez. In Spanish, it's actually Yxstian, which is similarly pronounced to Cristian in Spanish. It's a very difficult name. If you ask one of my family members, they'll tell you a story of how that name originated. You ask another family member, they tell you a different story. So it's kind of pretty funny there. But so that's my name, and I've actually grew up in Riverside County my whole life. I was a mayor for 7 years, and then before that I was a council member for 4 years.
So with your name, it's an unordinary name and unforgettable. So with that being said, so many people know you because of that, correct?
Actually, that's true too, because it's funny, like sometimes people will see me from it's been like 20 years since high school. All right, I think I just told my age, but anyway, so it's been like 20 years since high school, and people will just say, oh, Yxstian, how you doing? I'm like, wow, how did you remember my name? And then they'll just tell me like, hey, once I knew how to say it, I just don't forget. Right. So I think, like you mentioned, it's just one of those names you don't forget.
You don't forget. And you mentioned when you were in government and being a teacher, how did your students pronounce your name?
So my students, well, they would pronounce it as Dr. Gutierrez because I have my doctorate degree. But the parents, they would always ask, well, how do you say your first name? And I would tell them as well. So they would always get a chuckle off of that. Yeah.
Did you ever get any Dr. G?
Yes, actually I did. Most of my middle school students and high school students would call me Dr. G.
Well, here at the office, the acronym that we have for you, Supervisor Yxstian Gutierrez, shortened down to SYG. It saves a lot more time than saying the full name, would you say?
Very true, very true. Yeah, you see it in emails. Staff is always saying, oh yeah, SYG was here, and he would like to do this, and so it's funny. But yeah, it's great.
Go ahead.
Awesome. Okay, so we are District 5, and we just want to know, what services does the county provide in District 5?
So we pretty much provide a lot of different services, from like cradle to the grave services, like, for example, literally.
Tell me about it. That sounds a little intimidating.
It does, right? Yeah. So cradle, you think about it. When someone gives birth, they have to get a birth certificate, right? When they get married, they have to go to the county recorder's office. When there's a passing, in someone's life, there has to be a death certificate. Also, through our criminal justice system, through our district attorney's office, through our public defender's office, our sheriff's office. That's the public safety aspect of county. But we also provide services like for assessments to the homes, like tax assessments. So all kinds of services, social services too, like from Office on the Aging, social services, in-home support services. So there's a lot. I can keep going on and on. It's actually 42, Jacob, 42 agencies that the county oversees.
And then with those 42, what is your main priority for the services for your 5th district?
That's a really good question too, Lillian, because one of the things that's really important to me is to help those that are in need. So I grew up, with my mom and my dad, but we didn't have a lot of resources growing up. So it's really important for me to make sure that we help residents navigate through the different county agencies and know how to get the right help. So working through those social services agencies, that's a very big priority of mine.
So big customer service, big customer oriented.
Absolutely.
Actually, the proper term would be constituent services.
That's
So
right.
it sounds like we're doing that. And I've heard a lot of people say, how do you do so much? Why do you do so much? And with that in mind, how do you balance all of this in your daily task as a supervisor?
Well, there's a lot of things that I do. Number one, time management. Being a county supervisor really involves a lot of time management. So using Outlook, making sure that I prioritize what's important, making sure that we have our short-term goals, our long-term goals for our department, our strategic plan. We have a production timeline as well. That I'm sure you know about it as well, right? So we do a lot in our district to really prioritize all of that. On the personal side, I also exercise as well and try to get some, exposure, to the community, in family life as well. That's also very important too.
And with those services, you say that you are going to different places, more like the senior centers, the VA centers, and just all around the whole area, just to let people know of your services, like doing the pop-ups when you're, at the park and stuff. Is that how a lot of the people get their information, or how do they get the information for the services?
Well, one of the issues that we have, I think, that we face in Riverside County, and I think with a lot of counties in California that are not Los Angeles County or like San Diego or some of those metropolitan counties, is that we don't have the media market, right? So if you look at those major cities, they have the news stations, all of those major news networks. We don't have that. So we really do have to go out and do those pop-ups. We have to go into those communities. We have to go into those HOAs. We have to go into those senior centers. And that's what our office has been doing with my staff and myself. Pretty much every Saturday, if you were to look at my calendar, I'm at an event, at a meet and greet, or at a senior center, or at a location where the folks that need the services are there.
And on top of that, Supervisor, there's a lot of people in our district that do say they read your emails, see your newsletters. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's great that they're telling you that. That's awesome, okay?
Yeah.
That means it's working.
The word gets out there.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. But, one of the things that we do is we send out emails to residents. But as I mentioned earlier, not everybody sees those emails. So we try to do a lot of the pop-ups, those meet and greets, those meetings at the senior centers. We also try to do telephone town halls too. We just held a telephone town hall in March of this year, and we had over 6,000 residents listen in to the call. 6,000 residents. Yeah.
That is a
Yeah,
lot of
that's a
people.
lot of
That is a lot of people.
Yeah, and with those 6,000 people, were you able to get a lot of their questions answered? Maybe things that you weren't aware of that were within that part where you had your town hall?
Yes, no, absolutely. I was able to get a lot of the questions answered. There were still over 100 questions that we weren't able to get answered. But what we did is we were able to divvy up those questions, and our staff actually reached out to those residents, whether it was through email or phone, with a response. But absolutely, it was a great experience because a lot of times when we have these meet and greets, we only have like 10 or 15 folks that show up. But at this telephone town hall, we were able to have so many people there, and it really felt like you can listen to the community in that capacity.
Yes, it did. It did. And working with their community, we also know that you work with local government and city officials. Did you want to talk about our friends in the valley, the pass, and the areas that we cover?
It's been a wonderful experience, Jacob, these past 6 months, because I've really gotten to know the friends of the valley. Hemet, San Jacinto, the folks from the pass area, Beaumont, Banning, Calamasa, Cherry Valley, Cabazon, and even in Moreno Valley as well. And everyone has been so friendly. Great connections with our city council members, our school board members. I've been trying to make those connections not only just with city council, but like I mentioned, school board, and folks in our special districts like board members to parks, and recreation districts, board members to cemetery districts. That's also very important too, in addition to, of course, being out there in the community.
Can you let people know what the difference is between city services and unincorporated area services?
Yes, so that's a great question too, because a lot of times people will call our office and then we have to educate them and let them know that, well, that's actually a city service and what we do is county service. So one of the biggest things that a city does is they do, usually their parks, their community parks, traffic lights, stop signs, curbs and gutters within the boundaries of the city. They also do residential streets, and they maintain their arterial streets as well, like the boulevards and all of that. With county, we do much more than just that. We also do those county-wide services too.
Supervisor, if I don't live within city limits, right, and I live in a the word is slipping my mind right now.
Unincorporated.
Unincorporated area, yeah. What do I have? Do I have any local officials that I can partner with?
Yes, so you can actually reach out to the county supervisor that represents your area, the office, and they have a whole team. And that's one of the reasons why they have a team, is so they act as your government, so they will be able to reach out to those county agencies to help you and provide services like animal services, public safety services, residential road improvements for your unincorporated area. So they do all that stuff. So they provide all the municipal services for those unincorporated communities.
So you're saying these services, so what services do they have to offer? What agency would they go to if they would to need those services?
Well, one of the things like animal services they would go to for the animals. Road improvement would be like transportation, of course. But the biggest thing I always tell everyone, Lillian, is that to go to our office, reach out to our office, and then we can help them navigate all those agencies, because it's big. One of the biggest differences in getting in this role is the difference between working in a city, which was a lot smaller, to now a county, which is larger than 13 states.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. And just our last question real quick is, can you briefly touch on what the difference between a city council is and a unincorporated area? What's the closest thing to a city council in an unincorporated area?
Well, one of the things, so in a city, they have a city council, which usually has a mayor as well. Mm-hmm. So in an unincorporated area, we have a municipal advisory council. So this is an advisory council to the office of the supervisor that represents that area. And these are residents that have to live in that area, by the way. So they have to live in that area, and they act as the eyes and ears for that supervisorial district. That's an awesome question, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much today for meeting with us. We really enjoyed having this conversation and learning so much about the difference between, the district and cities and what a supervisor does as a role. So, but we will talk to you soon on our next one. We'll be talking about homelessness and how we can help them.
Absolutely. Really looking forward to that. I'm always getting questions about homelessness, and the county, Lillian is the lead agency in addressing homelessness in terms of funding, and so really looking forward to providing some responses to that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Let's keep in mind to thrive in D5. Have a good one.
That's right.